for a panel discussion, Redefining India, Unlocking the Nation's Potential, I'd like to invite Mr. R. Seetharaman, CEO, Doha.Bank, to join us here on stage. He was adjudged the best CEO in the Middle East 3 times over the last 10 years. He's received doctorates from various universities, including in global governance from the European University. He has also recently received the Gold Stevie Award for Executive of the Year in Paris at the International Business Awards. I'd also like to invite Don Schultz, Chairman Brand Finance, who has authored and co-authored more than 28 books and written more than 150 articles on trade, both professional and academic. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite Mr. Akhil Gupta, Vice Chairman, Bharti Enterprises. And of course, Mr. Shivinder Mohan Singh, Vice Chairman, Fortis. He has been redefining the way healthcare is viewed in the world, and the Fortis strategy and execution story has actually been translated into a case study at Harvard Business School. We also have with us Abhishek Mishra, Honorable Minister of Skill Development, Government of Uttar Pradesh. Infrastructure and skill development has been a huge focus for them, inviting businesses to invest and hence creating great employment opportunities. So completing that circle, and we really appreciate the participation of Government of Uttar Pradesh as our state partners in this Global Business Summit. We'd also like to invite Mr. Vikram Kirloskars, CMD, Kirloskar Systems, who is responsible for setting up the successful joint ventures, Toyota Textile Machinery Private Limited, and of course, Toyota Kirloskar Motor Private Limited. We have with us our moderator for this afternoon, Shri Janmajay Sinha, Chairman Asia Pacific, Boston Consulting Group. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I leave you in the hands of our moderator, Mr. Janmajay Sinha.
So it's my very great privilege to moderate this panel. The benefits of moderation are that you get wisdom for free. You don't have to say very much, and you can listen to everyone tell you about their specific areas. And we have a very august panel, and what we are going to do is we are going to talk about redefining India's potential, other than in infrastructure of the normal kind that people believe in. We are going to talk about some of the soft infrastructure and about specific sectors where what will be unlocked in the years ahead will be described and defined. Yesterday, the Prime Minister made, and I made notes of this, made 5 points about what the government is trying to do to enable. And he said the government's business will be to be in public goods, to avoid externalities, to avoid the buildup of competitive power, to deal with asymmetric information, and to refine subsidy design. Those would be the 5 areas that the government would focus on, and it would leave most of the rest to enabling business and making India an easier and better place to do business in. And I think no one could have described that better. You know, not an economist, and he did it with such great simplicity that there was some joy in it. What we are going to do today is we are going to talk about, Professor Schultz will talk about branding and what India needs to do with respect to branding. Vikram Kirloskar will talk about manufacturing and how to scale up. Akhil Gupta will talk about telecom and the expectations ahead. Professor Mishra will talk about skill development. Mr. Seetharaman will talk about financing, and Shivinder Singh will talk about hospitals and healthcare. So without much ado, could I ask Professor Schultz to make your opening comments?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a very exciting time in India. There's no question about that. My area is brands and branding. And I want to make a point in the case that India must build brands. Last night there was a lot of conversation, and there's been some this morning, about China and how China is slowing down. I've spent considerable time in China, And I think I can put my finger on one of the reasons that China is having the difficulties they are today. China, in essence, focused on producing commodities. And commodities are driven only by price. And once your price advantage disappears, your value disappears. So I really believe that brands and branding are the only way to avoid the commodity trap that many emerging nations find themselves in. The fact that they have low-cost labor really covers up many of the mistakes that are being made. Brands are the only way to differentiate India and Indian companies from those of the multiple competitors which are emerging everywhere around the world. An example I often try to use is cameras. If you look at Chinese cameras and if you talk to Chinese managers, most all of them have a Sony or a Panasonic or an Olympic. And you ask them, why don't you have a Chinese camera? And they say, well, the Chinese cameras don't have quality. They don't have good names. They don't have good brands. And I said, take the camera you have and turn it over. And what do you think? It's made in China. It's produced in China. It's assembled in China. China has really missed the boat, I think, in terms of how they can grow that country simply because they have provided themselves a commodity base on which to try to build a country. The commodities today are starting to decline. The same is true around the world. Look at Turkey. Turkey produces absolutely fabulous fabrics. They produce great design. But what happens? The Italians come, give them orders for activities and garments. They produce them, they ship them to Italy. Italy sews, or the Italians sew on the brand name in the garment, raise the price, take the money, and the Turks get practically nothing. So part of the issue here is the same as around the world. I think there are three areas that India has which can be very, very helpful in building brands. First, number one, brands are no longer about mass and no longer just about products. Apple is much as lifestyle as it is a product. Today, the most valuable brands in India, if you look at the various valuation systems, the most valuable brands are primarily service brands. If we're heading for a service economy, knowing how to build service brands is much more critical than trying to learn how to build and develop brands on basic products. You already have a leg up and out about knowing how to build brands. You have brands such as Airtel, ICICI, LIC, Tata Consultant, Wipro, and multiple others. The question is, can you leverage that knowledge to produce other products and other lines? It's fine to want to be a manufacturing company, and Make in India is a grand idea. But it doesn't necessarily just have to be products. It can be services, and it can be other kinds of resources. One of the things that is happening is we have to focus on the growth and the opportunities that are there. The second advantage I think that India has is that you have the infrastructure and the capabilities to build brands around the world. Digital India is only an indication of the capabilities. The interesting thing about what has happened with telecommunications, digital, electronic, mobile, whatever you want to call it, it is absolutely taking over the world. And as it takes over the world, what it does is it changes the whole system and the whole process of brands and branding. You have communications that are increasingly dominating the marketplace. Having over 800 million consumers today, with millions more to come, is only the tip of the iceberg. Digital and social will be the tools of the future. So the question is, can you take what you're learning today locally about how communication can build services and leverage that in other markets around the world? Most organizations today have to unlearn what they know about communication. Any concept or any idea that was developed before 1994, which is when the internet became essentially usable, is irrelevant. Interactivity rules the world today. The problem we have in many, many instances, our brands and our branding concepts were invented in the 1970s, 1980s, and even in the 1990s. And we hang on to them even though we know they're irrelevant. So most marketing organizations have to unlearn what they know. You're inventing it here, I think, for the first time. The third thing, and I think this is absolutely critical, and it's an advantage that no one I have heard speak yet about. Most of the major markets and marketing organizations are family-owned in India. They're managed, operated, and increasingly we're seeing that the world that families and individuals can build brands better than other traditional organizations. Take, for example, Richard Branson and Virgin, Jack Ma and Alibaba, Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Brands take a strong leader, a great concept, and start to invest and start to build that over time. That's because, and I think family organizations have a much longer term. They look further down the road. They are intent on building something for the future as opposed to building something for the next 90-day or quarterly report. Brands require long-term plans and outlooks. You can't build a brand in a week, you can't build a brand in a month, and you certainly can't start over and rebuild a brand once it's been destroyed. It takes time. Can you take what's being learned by Tata and Bajaj and JSW Steel and others to build publicly held organizations that can build brands? The first step in making this transition is to ignore what built Western brands. Do not follow what the US and the UK did or tried to do. It won't work in the future. It's not working today, and it probably should be shelved and put away. What that says is, using all the capabilities that the organization, the country, and the people have, brands that matter to people and countries. One example that I have followed with some intent over the last several months, the financial inclusion plan developed by Prime Minister Modi, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dharan Yojana, or People's Wealth Program. That basic idea of making banking services available to everyone has been floating around India for several years. Then along came the Prime Minister Modi and his plan to give every person in India the opportunity to have access to a bank account. That program, starting last August, has now enrolled over 110 million Indian consumers. That's branding at its finest. What I argue is government knows how to build brands. Can commercial and professional organizations do as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. And it's wonderful that you talked about family businesses, because as you talk about building brands and family businesses, now let's ask a family business how to build manufacturing. Vikram.
Thank you. I represent the automotive industry, which is roughly 7.1% of the GDP, 45% of the manufacturing GDP, and we employ about 29 million people directly and indirectly. This automobile industry, I think, is really one of the keys to the Make in India program, and to really unlock the Make in India program and get manufacturing as a significant part of the country's growth, we have to make this industry grow. What I'd like to talk about is really the change in mindset that is required, both on the government side and on the industry side, to unlock the potential in India. On the government side, I think the change in mindset required is about scale. We cannot become globally competitive unless we really scale up. The volumes we are talking of in India are still relatively low compared to other parts of the world. And unless we really get into higher volumes and higher volume of production, we can't really grow in competitiveness the way some of our competitors around the world are. So this is one part. How do we get up and scale? One is to make, I think, slowly start reducing taxation. Cars are taxed more than cigarettes, and I think we produce a lot more employment, a lot more benefits and innovation, and a lot more downside industry effects than cigarettes do. So some amount of taxation has to be relooked at on the entire auto sector. Regarding industry itself, I think we require a major mind shift in the way we think in running our companies. In 1991, or when we had the first opening up of the Indian economy, we faced competition for the first time, and we changed and reorganized our businesses. And we tried to make them more competitive against foreign companies coming in, as well as open competition locally. But now we are coming to a different kind of a situation. If we have to be part of the global world and sell our products as all over the world, we have to have a different level of quality, cost, and delivery. It's a complete parameter shift. What was 1 has to be 10. And this requires a change in attitude in manufacturing. There are a couple of things which I look at when we look at manufacturing. One is a concept of maintain, improve, and reform. Maintenance in India is very, very poor. That's the worst, that's the weakest part of our manufacturing area. And weakest part, I think, of management area as well. When I look at maintenance, it is not just maintaining a machine, but a concept of, if I've got 2 new customers, but I've lost 1. How do I avoid that? How do I maintain my existing customers in the value chain at all times? This is an important concept which we have to change in our mindset. Second is putting a lot of effort in skill development of people. Humans make products. It's not machines build quality. People build quality. We've seen this in our industry. We've seen this in our company. The more we train people, the more we upgrade people, the better our quality and better our performance becomes. So there are a lot more things I can talk about, but basically the other 2 mindset issues I'd like to emphasize. One on the government side regarding on scale, how to build up scale and demand in the economy. And second, in the industry itself, to respond by improving our competitiveness, our quality by a level of 10, and building up skill and human resources as we go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Vikram, and thank you also for giving us back 1 minute. I would like to now ask Akhil Gupta to talk about the telecom sector, which has been a spur of a lot of growth and development in India.
Thank you, and good morning. My task is a bit easier because the Honorable Minister did talk about telecom and the government's vision. So as a representative of the private sector, let me just supplement briefly on that. I think the debate whether digital India is needed and whether it's going to be the backbone for growth of the Indian economy, I think is passé. We all unanimously agree that's the case. To my mind, the issue is what is really digital India in the Indian context. I don't think digital India in the Indian context is the same as it could be in the US context. So what is digital India? I believe in a very simple manner, if we are able to connect every Indian, and in the first phase, every Indian who uses telephony to internet and give him access to internet at a reasonable speed, to my mind, that's digital India. Because that would bring such enormous benefits that the whole transformation of this economy can happen. The minister pointed out about some of the things that the government is doing, but let me give my perspective from a private sector point of view as to where we are and where we can go and how can we achieve it. You know, in the last 2 decades, quite clearly, India has gone through one revolution, and that's telecom. And I use the word revolution deliberately because from virtually nil telecommunication in 20 years, we have come to a position where 90% of the population is covered under telecom on the mobile front. We have about 82% of geography covered. And thirdly, and most importantly, the cheapest tariff anywhere in the world. So this is a wonderful foundation. The minister had talked about 950 million customers today, accounting for the double SIMs, et cetera, et cetera. I would say anywhere between 650 to 700 million unique users. That's a wonderful base to start working from. But when it comes to the data customers, we are less than 20%. So the question is, can we provide data connectivity to all? Let me first talk of the requirement. Would there be a requirement? Our belief is that it's just a matter of a few years that everybody who uses telephony has got to have access to internet. Now, irrespective whether it's in cities or in rural areas, there could be need for news, for information, for entertainment, sports, education, healthcare, money transfer which the government is doing, and people from migrant labor want to do back to their kith and kin. There will be need for everybody to be connected to internet. So it's not a question whether we will be able to provide this and there will be demand. I think there will be demand. The issue is, we are firmly of the opinion, this once again, like the first revolution on voice, is going to be a supply-led demand, where both the government and the private sector will have to contribute. The operators will contribute by way of providing the networks, rolling them out deep into the country. The government will have to supply the spectrum. They'll have to supply the ease of doing business by way of right-of-way, by way of taking off the roadblocks in putting up the towers and the other necessary infrastructure. This obviously needs a lot of investment. Just to give you the perspective, telecom industry today in India has invested anywhere between $80 to $100 billion. And I go by the fact that our company has invested $25 billion. Therefore, I expect that the whole industry is at least 3.5 to 4 times. What would it take to take 3G? Because that, to my mind, in the immediate future is the only way we can bring internet connectivity to everybody. Taking 3G to the same level as 2G to cover at least 90-95% population in the next 2 to 3 years would need at least $40 to $50 billion. Now that obviously is a huge challenge, but is also a great opportunity. So we are clearly looking at a data revolution. The other point which I just want to very quickly mention is telecom also provides a massive opportunity for this Make in India. And the reason, like the minister had mentioned, devices in particular. There are 4 things which I see in devices which absolutely is ready-made for Make in India. One, there is a huge volume even today. There is a growing demand, there is a recurring demand, and everything in this field is imported. So it's absolutely a godsend opportunity for us to start Make in India. I think India is absolutely and clearly on the threshold of a second telecom revolution, and like the government, we in the private sector, despite all the difficulties, are absolutely confident we will make it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gupta, and it comes straight from that. Are you willing to provide $50 billion, Mr. Seetharaman?
We live in a changing world. I'm a banker over 30 years living abroad. I run an institution which is of global significance. Financial economies are still converting as real. Real economies are redefining the scope and performance. Communism has changed. Capitalism is altering in form and substance. Mixed economies are the telling stories. Still, advanced economies are grossly underperforming. They will continue to do so. So there's an absolute shift in the market preference. That's India. We all recognize this is a defining moment on account of globalization, on account of re-regulation, on account of technology and consumerism. There is no better place. But looking at the performance of what we have had, it was a missed opportunity everyone recognized. I'll put it in prospects. Last year, the total foreign direct investments was 187 billion for United States, 147 for China, and we procured just 28 billion. Indonesia was 19 billion. Singapore was 64 billion. And again, Germany or UK was 40 and odd. That clearly shows there has to be a reorganization in terms of the policy changes. This is all coming up. But the bigger issue is what sort of investment climate we are going to set in. what sort of business prospects we are going to sit in. The vision is there. Yesterday's the Prime Minister's speech was an absolute character and commitment. How do we bring in investments? Here are the opportunities. Which part of the world today is running in fiscal and current account surplus? It is the Gulf states, where 45% of the world oil, 20-25% of the world gas comes from. It is not United States. It is not Japan. It is not Europe. In spite of the fact there is a regression in the oil price, still the oil break-even is $27, $28. Even if they sell it at 40, they're going to have current account surplus. That's where we invested proximity and human capital. There are 7 million Indians. In fact, remittance is more than the foreign direct investments. Over 75 billion is coming to India from blue collars. Let's understand the dynamics of it. We need to forge global partnership, reorganization in terms of our mindset. So we need to have a total alliance with the Gulf states. That's point number one. Point number two, trillions of dollars are required. 12th Finance Commission clearly says, here is a requirement of a road, rail, airport, seaport. Again, endless. If there is a paltry flow of investments, if there is a regression in terms of the rupee, if there is no alignment between monetary policy and fiscal policy, we have done. We cannot sustain our credibility. If you have to eliminate extreme poverty, if you have to bring in gender equality, if you have to bring in health care, if you have to bring in education universal, if you have to, more than anything else, sustainability in terms of environment, you need direct investments. It means infrastructure creation is a must. How do we do it? Here are the opportunities. We annually pay over 100 billion for oil and gas import. India is importing over 100 billion oil and gas. Bilateral trade is over $150 billion. We have a net payment to make every year. Let's declare moratorium. Let us issue the debt paper. Let us buy time 5 to 7 years. Let's create this 1 trillion. It is possible. This is the supply chain. Today, oil price is regressing. Today, Gulf states need such partnership. They need sustainable value chain. And that's where we need to create. And again, we also have to recognize the debt restructuring is a must. There's nothing abnormal about it. Today's world is full of reorganization. What has changed in the last 5 years, ever since the crisis cropped up? It's only liquidity. Liquidity crisis moved into a funding crisis. Funding crisis is moved into a solvency crisis and sovereign crisis. Here is an economy, within any economic terms, this century belongs to India. It's all the mindset and the policy changes and convergence of politics which can drive the change. There are ways and means of reorganizing in terms of infrastructure. I was talking to the railway minister. Today, the Gulf states are embarking on bringing unity in terms of GCC, pan-GCC railway systems. And again, there could be a knowledge transfer, there could be investment partnership. Healthcare, education, and again, when it comes to supply chain in terms of renewables, rising sea levels, out of the top 15 states in the world, 15 countries in the world, 3 of these cities are highly polluted cities. By forging partnership with the Gulf states again, I'm overemphasizing Gulf simply because this is a missed opportunity so far. 365 days sunshine, photovoltaic, billions of dollars are being invested, import, again, solar systems. Ensure you have sustainability in terms of environment as well. We are agricultural-driven economy. Over 50% of the working population producing less than 22% of the GDP. Here is an opportunity for you to converge and produce value systems which are second to none. In terms of banking, again, we can reorganize. Again, when it comes to restructuring of debt, there are tested models, and we need to look at it objectively and see what sort of bad books, non-performing loans, how do we bundle them? How do we package them? How do we sell it to international markets and so that we improve the risk profile? We are grossly underbanked, undercapitalized. Let's open up the banking system itself. That will create more opportunity for the inward investments. And again, banks and financial institutions, let them come here. Foreign institutions, let them take enterprise risk integrations and let them learn through their experience. Here is the opportunity. These are the ways and means by which financial stability comes in. Once the financial stability comes in, overall GDP growth is sustainable.
Thank you, Mr. Seetharaman. So, Shivinder, are you getting money from the Gulf or not for your hospitals?
Thank you, Jamija, and good afternoon, everybody. My moderator asked me to speak on soft infrastructure, so I'll just give a couple of comments and maybe if they make any sense, Doha.Bank can fund some of that. We've talked a lot about, as a country, about building infrastructure. It allows the economy to grow and what it does to the economy, and we all understand it. We use it in our day-to-day lives. I want to draw a distinction between what we need to do for hard infrastructure and soft infrastructure. Hard infrastructure, to my mind, is build, but soft infrastructure is required to maintain, and I think Vikram talked about maintaining in the manufacturing context. Similarly, hard infrastructure, to my mind, is akin to attracting investments, tourism, people, but soft infrastructure is required to retain. You can build roads, airports, ports, and platforms, but you need the software, the soft skills, people, and the systems to retain quality infrastructure. And therefore, to my mind, hard infrastructure really is the foundation, but the building is a soft infrastructure in that term. The hard infrastructure, to my mind, gives the GDP a pop, but the retaining of growth happens with soft infrastructure. The Prime Minister yesterday talked very eloquently about skill and jobs and of productivity loss because of inadequate healthcare in our nation. It sounds a similar number to the amount that we lose on importing fuel, it seems. And therefore, I think the question that we need to put to ourselves is, we have inadequate resource to build adequate soft infrastructure, whether it's in education or health, and we don't have that kind of capital. But over the last 65 years, we have already spent a lot of money on building some of the infrastructures. If we look around healthcare, the inordinate infrastructure the country has, which is very lowly used, especially in the non-urban centers, and the same goes for education. We have schools, we have hospitals, we don't have doctors, we don't have teachers. Can we look at leveraging what we already have and then build on further capacity building rather than just looking at adding new, which sounds more interesting and probably gets more coverage. But leveraging our existing infrastructure, to my mind, is a significant gap that we face in our country. From the WHO's norm perspective, we need to spend $3 trillion in healthcare to get to what the country needs from a healthcare perspective. I don't think that's going to happen in a hurry. But if we just leverage the government and the private infrastructure in the country, we probably can save half that money by just doing what we do well. And I'll leave with a final message that I think we as citizens, and all of us, I think, are in that pool, are more to blame than most other countries have, which is we don't take our health as our responsibility. We take more care of what Vikram produces, which is our cars, over our own bodies and health. A car has a little chink when you get out on the parking lot in the morning. You will not go to work, but you take it straight to the workshop or make your driver take it to the workshop. You have a little chink in the morning when you wake up with a shoulder pain or a back pain. You will shrug it off, probably pop a pill, and get on with work and not do anything about it till it becomes acute or chronic. And that's the nature of our mindset, because I guess we're a hardworking folk, but we ignore our health. And I think we need to change the narrative to be my health is my responsibility if we want to actually change the soft infrastructure from a healthcare point of view, at least, if not on education and other fronts.
Thank you so much. Professor Mishra, Shivinder has actually set it up for you. You get hard infrastructure builds, you maintain by soft. You attract with hard, you retain with soft. And you're all about soft skills and the development. So we're excited to hear you.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. And, I'll pick up from where, all of people said, but also what Shivinder said by saying, leveraging what you have and trying to do well what we do anyway every day. And one example that I'd like to say is, when we looked at the skills gap analysis we did, and we realized that only about 2% of our population undergoes any sort of formal training intervention. Whereas if you look at a country like Korea, or if you look at a country like Germany, almost 70 to 80% people of the population, general masses is what I'm talking about, undergo formal structured training programs. And that is what actually differentiates that country. It's a soft skill which will always create and retain the hard structure. And many times the differentiation the competitive advantage, the competitive edge that you will get is because of the talent, is because of the human resources, because of the skill sets that your people have vis-a-vis any other population. That is what I think we are all about, and that's where we wanted to intervene. When we realized that only 2% of the population has this, but there are already existing schemes and structures within state governments, within Government of India. Almost every scheme had a budget for training program. But what happened, it was like, let's say 2% of the scheme, 3% of the scheme, maximum 4% of the scheme was supposed to be spent on training. And nobody really cared about that 4% because the performance, we always argue in management that, what gets measured gets done. And most of the managers, the top bureaucrats, the top politicians, the ministers were measured on their performance vis-a-vis what was 96% of their budget allocation, 98% of their budget allocation. So the 2% always got ignored. So we looked at that problem and we said, you know what, to create a strategy of skilling, we need a structural intervention. So we attempted to solve a strategy problem through a structure change, and we created a new structure for governance, and we called it the UP Skill Development Mission. In that skill development mission, the Chief Minister said, let's pool all the money from all the schemes for all the departments that comes for training purposes, pool it all together, give it teeth, give it critical people, and then run it in a mission mode. So that people are just geared and they're just delivering, and everybody outsources their training job to this particular skill, mission. And that was, I think that's something that has worked brilliantly well. It's been in the offing for about a year now. We were almost the first state in the country to create that. In fact, many others are still creating ministries around it, but UP implemented that in December 2013, and we have done some very good work in the last year. In fact, in the last 6 months, we have trained about 110,000 people in the skill development structure. So that was a structural intervention that we did. The idea was to give people not just hard skills, not just technical skills, not just material skills, but also life skills, also communication skills, also presentation skills, also skills around health and keeping safety in their premises where they work. How do you commute, how you convey. And also we thought about creating, wealth creation opportunities. So we said, all these people who go and get trained into our structures will also be given an entrepreneurship development exposure, at least for a day or two, where we bring in people from the industry, we bring in the institution management committees, which is comprised of industry people or bankers, and say, please tell them how to start a business. Please tell them what is the route to entrepreneurship. So, and I'll give you a very important, touching story we had. We had a lovely function with the Chief Minister about a couple of days ago, where a girl who was not being sent to school, she looked at the advertisement of the Skill Development Mission. She enrolled about 16, 17-year-old girl. She trained to become a cashier in a retail store, in one of the largest retail stores that is in Lucknow. And she got a job for about 8,000 to 9,000 rupees. And she came to the Chief Minister's residence and said, I had never seen 15,000 rupees in my life at one time. Now I count about 3 lakh rupees every day. And now I'm earning 9,000 rupees. I want to work here for 3 years and then go on and become a judge. What the mission has done is to open up possibilities, to give dreams, is to give wings to the ambitions. And that is, I think, most empowering. That is most powerful. That is what really made us happy. And that is what I think is the way forward for us. Another idea is that we want to achieve through skill and the mission is democratization of opportunities. We always have had brilliant opportunities in the urban sectors, but in the rural sectors where our real demographic dividend lies, the demographic dividend that we talk about is actually in the youth, it's actually in the rural areas and hinterlands of Uttar Pradesh. And that is where we wanted to say, we will come to you, to your doorsteps. We'll not say you come to Lucknow, you come to Kanpur, you come to Allahabad. No, we will come to you at a tehsil level, set up a private training provider, and then go ahead. We also create a structural intervention there again, and said we'll have 3 modes of training providing. One will be a private training provider who will be a professional, corporate guys who can come in and train. Government training providers, and third is a flexible MOU, and we have partners like Cotton Synth, we have partners like Z4S, we have Raymond's, we have Zycom, we have Cafe Coffee Day as companies. We have 10 such partners across the state who come in, set up their shops, set up training centers, and absorb at least 60% of the people within that. What it also did was internalization of the cost for corporates for training. Otherwise, training is a big cost for corporates today. What the skill development mission does is internalize the cost for the government sector. We said, we will train them for free, but you please provide them with placements. And these are the people that you train as per your own course, your own curriculum, and you take them on board later. On only 60%, you don't have to take everybody. That's something which we said. We also created a state council for vocational training because we realized that most of the people in any job in the country were trained once, and then they were just been working and working and working. So reskilling and constantly updation of skills is not an idea that as a country, as a society, as a culture, we are very in tune with. So we created a structure where you can do a 3-month plumbing course or a carpentry course, and you can go back, work, come back, do another 3 months, go back, work, come back and do a bachelor's into that, go back, work, come back and do a master's, and even do a PhD in plumbing and carpentry. That's the structure that we have already put in place. So that's something which is available today. Another thing which it is doing increasingly is equalization of the earning power in rural sectors versus the urban sectors. What we've noticed in sectors like carpentry, you can very easily get up to 500 to 600 rupees a day, which in the rural area, living within the urban centers, within the rural centers. So it's also controlling migration to urban centers in that sense. And effectively, you are earning about 18 to 20,000 rupees a month, which is probably more than the starting salary of MBAs or normal MBAs in cities like Lucknow and Kanpur. So we have democratized opportunities to that extent and equalized earning power. So that's something, and the blue collar workers, you talked about $75 billion inflow. That's the skill that we want to create. We want to create exporters from here. Why should people go from any other country, even if you have to work in GCC? In fact, we were trying to tie up with Dubai 2020 because the demand for skills is going to be phenomenal in Dubai 2020. We are entering into an MOU. The Chief Secretary is already here. We are entering into an MOU with Dubai 2020 and say, we will train people. You want skilled manpower. You want people in carpentry. You want firefighting, whatever. Nurses, bedside attendants in hospitals, we will train them. Please pick up our boys and girls and give them employment. So that's the initiative that we have taken. And 2022. Qatar 2022, another opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Seetharaman. We'll pursue that as well. And one thing I would like to say is, this is an initiative which shows the responsiveness of the government, the engagement of the government, and to provide a nurturing ecosystem to the youth. We are betting on that. We are providing a nurturing environment. And I hope that we'll have your best wishes and your support for the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So now you can see that we've been quite disciplined in the amount of time we have spent. So as I open it up to questions, I ask for the same discipline, which means that the question has to be brief so that there can be an answer. So if you promise to ask brief questions and allow me the opportunity, the privilege or the non-privilege of cutting you short if the question is too long, could I ask you to raise your hand and ask any questions? Yes, sir.
I'm addressing to Professor Mishra. My name is Ajit Yadav. Very laudable. We feel so inspired that here is the high energy level in the government system and compliments. The question really is, as a country, we've talked about skill development. You will appreciate and agree, a couple of years. With this great program that you're running and the structural interventions, are you also looking at, measurability in a reasonable time frame? Let's say, for example, are you wanting to create those showpieces? Take the example of NCR. I'm sure Tehsil, that's a perfect idea. Take NCRs. One of the most Herculean tasks, this sample will agree, is to get a carpenter, the masons, the drivers, and what have you. How do we do it in a reasonable time frame?
Well, thank you for the compliments. And what we have done is we have created a model centers, something that we can really show off. And one of those centers that we're very proud to have, that we've nurtured over the years with support, is the Raymond Center that we have created in Lucknow. We'd invite any of you ever visiting to Lucknow, please come and look at the intensity. Boys and girls come from almost 100 and 150 kilometers to come and get trained at the center and then get absorbed. That's one response. The second thing you said, you talked about NCR. We are creating another model center in Noida and Ghaziabad, For the first time, the principals for the vocational education, apart from my secretary, are here. They have never, the secretary for the vocational education is doing brilliant work. We made sure that we all come to this. The principals, have been brought in here to get a feel of what is the expectations of the people, how the industry, they are reaching out to partners in the industry and saying, we want to do this, we want to create centers of excellence, we want to create islands of excellence within the structure in the UP government and in our framework. Please help us do that. We are actively doing it, and within 3 months, I promise that I'll take you myself to one of those centers. I already have your details. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks for a lovely panel discussion. My name is Ram Krishnan. My question has to do with the problems that face women in India. 55% literacy level, underutilization in terms of practically replacing cattle in terms of agriculture, and the whole aspect of educating them, skilling them, and making them employable. Would anyone in the panel like to comment on that?
I can have a shoot and then others can go. What we are doing, and the questions you raise are pertinent. The solutions will be long term. But in the immediate term, what we are doing is that we have mandated certain courses only for women in our ITIs. And the Honorable Chief Minister has also announced specialized ITIs only targeted for women. So this year, out of 20 ITIs, we are giving 5 ITIs only for women. And for the other ITIs also, we are going to create sector-specific course delivery and content mechanisms targeted directly at women, which can skill the girls and the women in our sector and then make them employable. So that's what we are doing in the Skill Development Initiative. As a complement to that, we have also instituted a mechanism called HOSLA. HOSLA is a mission for taking care of their nutrition needs, and launched 2 ambulance schemes, which is the world's largest ambulance scheme today under one umbrella. It's called the 108 and the 102 schemes. 108 is for general ambulance, 102 is for maternity related. So they will pick you up from the start of your pregnancy up to the 2 years after delivery and make sure that you get all immunization, make sure you get all nutrition, you get folic acid and everything, and you have a structured, organized delivery mechanism access as well. So these are some of my comments. The panel, I'm sure, can add to that.
Well, I think the answer to the problems you mentioned ultimately is what the Prime Minister said yesterday. We have to create jobs. Because once you create jobs and there is income, there is expenditure, there will be industry, there will be service industry, people will get direct and indirect jobs. And I think on top of that, what the minister here is talking about is skilling. It's not confined to any industry. I'm seeing it in telecom industry. I head the telecom sector skill council. Tremendous opportunity for skilling people, and more important, skilling people in every nook and corner of the country. But for that, we have to provide job opportunities, because skilling will come in handy when there are job opportunities. Job opportunities will come in more when there is skilled labor.
Can I, Janvijay? I'm glad you raised the question. I was looking at it as part of soft infrastructure as well in some ways. I think apart from skilling, one of the things that at least we've seen, and I personally believe is going to have a significant impact, is actually taking the idea of respect and the role of a woman in society actually at the school level. And we do a lot of engagement with schools by default as a healthcare provider. So we have about 3,000 plus schools that we deal with, about 2 million students. And a couple of years ago, we came up along with PwC with a program called Global Dignity that we take to every school on a regular basis through programs and conversations, where we're actually talking about what is the role of a woman and how respecting a woman through the course of life can actually change the culture of an economy. So I actually believe that we have to start it at the ground level, at schools. And because kids, number one, firstly believe in equality a lot more than adults do. And getting it right at that step takes care of their future, but also to take it back home and tell their parents what to do. The same thing that I guess our children learn about environment and Diwalis and firecrackers. So addressing it at a point in time where they're much more susceptible to these interventions. So different from a skilling context, but I think that's a big opportunity. And I'd actually encourage all people who deal with education in schools to actually teach it at that level.
Janvijay, just a follow-up comment.
Could I just get the
All right.
My name is Kamal Mittal. Question is regarding health. As we sit here, the outside air quality index is 263, which is unhealthy. Now, the question is, when we look at our health, the only alternative we have is to leave Delhi between Diwali and Holi. And Times of India has clearly written an article saying that most of northern India is extremely polluted. The question is, what can an individual do to take care of his or her health when the air quality index outside is absolutely unhealthy and tells you not to do any exercise and stay at home and so on and so forth? What do children do? What do elderly do in such situations?
Shivinder, could I pass this to you?
Well, I land up on the solution side. The problem side is sitting somewhere on that side, so I'll let them answer that part. So I face the challenge myself when a lot of people come to us in the organization. And whereas I hear a lot of comment about the fact that it should not go out in a polluted environment and exercise or be out in the open, the only solution that I can see for people like us who live in a society like this is actually make your lungs stronger. And therefore you actually do have to go and exercise, but not in a gym, outside in the open, because the reason why people who come from abroad get a Delhi belly is because they're not used to the food and the environment in Delhi. We don't get a Delhi belly because our system can take care of it. And if we're actually able to make our system stronger to take care of the society that we live in, we'll probably be able to handle it a little bit better than other people. Having said that, even if I just look at our own organization, the number of pulmonology and bronchial problems is on a very, very significant rise, and therefore it's something that we need to address as a nation. And therefore I'll put it on that side table to see what we need to do to fix the problem.
Okay. The automobile industry is a whipping boy all the time, whether it's taxes or pollution. Let me just give some things, just try to clear up a few ideas, a few things. There's a case going on in the Supreme Court, which was brought about by Mr. Salve, saying tax cars at 3 times the level, etc., because of pollution. And the Environment Ministry has just put in an affidavit saying that the pollution in Delhi caused by cars is only 13% of the total particulate level. It's one of the lowest in India. I think we are missing a lot of the data in this situation. I hate coming to Delhi from Bangalore because every time I come here, I go back with a bad cold and a bad infection. And I avoid my best to come here. So if you start looking at the data, what is the cause of most of this? It's fires in the fields and use of wood for cooking, use of other domestic cooking materials, as well as generating sets all over the place, the power plants. It's a whole lot of variety of items. From the car industry, we have been proposing to incentivize fleet replacement, 10 or 15-year-old cars to be replaced. We are currently operating at Euro 3, Euro 4 around the country. We are ready to go to the higher, similar to Europe, Europe has just gone to Euro 5, if the fuels are available. But even at Euro 4 level, Europe was at Euro 4 till last year. All the new cars in India, especially in Delhi, are all Euro 4. Then why is the environment still so polluted? So I think there are a lot of issues on this. And looking at the data and attacking the source of the problem is most important.
So this is a longer discussion, but it's been a fantastic panel. And to unlock the nation's potential, we need to create a brand, build a mindset of scale. We need to have the second data revolution and build it out. We have to both build and maintain and attract in retail. So we need both hard and soft infrastructure. We need to attract FDI. And we need to take skilling up from 2% to more like 80–90% in a mission mode, doing it with teeth and pulling all the resources together. That's been a fascinating discussion. For me, I've learned a lot. Thank you so much. And we have now given you back some time. Thanks.
Thank you so much for a really wonderful panel discussion.